Great. Well, now that Rick has shown up, we can go ahead and get started.
Thank you.
See how I blamed him for the late start? That was a good pivot. Welcome to this panel about kind of celebrating 5 years of EdTech Books. Just from a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with EdTech Books, use EdTech Books?
Just familiar.
Okay, great. Well, good. Then we'll have lots of wonderful things that we can talk about this morning. To get started, we want to go ahead and introduce all of our panelists. I'll go last, so we'll just start with Jill and work our way over.
Hi, Jill Stefaniak. I'm an associate professor in the Learning Design and Technology program at the University of Georgia, and over the years, I've been involved with EdTech Books in a variety of different capacities, so looking forward to the conversations today.
Thanks, Royce.
I'm Royce Kimmons. I'm associate professor at Brigham Young University. So I'm the lead developer on EdTech Books and share some content with you.
Hello everyone, I'm Aras Bozkurt from Anadolu University. I am an associate professor of this institution.
And I am Dr. Cecil R. I'm assistant professor and director of secondary education at Emporia State University. I was there not at the birth of EdTech Books when Royce somehow manifested it out of the ether, but I was there the next morning. And so I've been around with EdTech Books since the beginning, have published, I think now we're on 7 books in EdTech Books and chapters in 3 books on EdTech Books. So it has become my primary publishing platform for all of my works, which has been really great. So to get started, Royce, can you just tell us what inspired the creation of EdTech Books? There were other publishing platforms out there that we could use for OER, so why take whatever free time you had to create a new one?
Well, I mean, first, a lot of us were doing OER work. So like Rick is here. I think Rick has the office next to mine. We both had books on Pressbooks, and we were at a lot of different projects. And I think Rick just came to me one day and said, "Listen, we need to have a place where we can just point people to this one website that points them to all of these great OER that we're creating." So okay, well, let's do that. So we created a landing page. And once we did that, we also at the same time were having some frustrations with Pressbooks as we were having difficulty with a few different things that we wanted to do with it. And so I just gradually started to increment that landing page to do some additional things to the point that I said, okay, now can we make this just completely replace Pressbooks? And so that was the birth. It came about because we were already doing OER. We wanted to make it more streamlined. We wanted to get more people involved. We wanted to connect all these efforts that people were doing in different universities in our field. Because we had a lot of people interested in OER, they didn't know what to do, or they were just doing things on their own, and we didn't have like a central place for people to do it.
Yeah, so that need for a repository, that need for a centralized location, that need for a tool that would allow us to do the kinds of things we wanted to do with books. I was a doctoral student working on a design development project, and Royce was actually my mentor for that, and came to him with that problem of, hey, the client that I'm working with wants a books that can do X, Y, Z, and we can't find a platform that does X, Y, Z. And so fortunately, he already had this going in the background, and he could say, well, come back in the morning and let me know if this looks like it will work. And yeah, Royce is some kind of crazy genie. So then, yeah, now we have the platform, and it became more about, well, how are we going to use the platform for publishing and dissemination? What is it going to really look like to be able to use the platform to publish? So Jill, can you talk a little bit about that and what publishing on the platform has looked like?
Sure. So I've been involved in a few different capacities. I've worked with a couple of colleagues. We edited a book for EdTech principles for instructional designers working in higher ed. And so that was a way where we could have that published. We wanted to have it open access so that we could reach practitioners. Really important when we start thinking about affordability and accessibility. How do people have access to the research and the stuff that, I always say we do a really good job talking to each other and having researchers talk to researchers, but being able to get our work out there to those that can use it in a meaningful way was important. And so we intentionally wanted to do that with EdTech Books. I was the editor-in-chief for the Journal of Applied Instructional Design for AECT from 2019 to March of 2023. And at the time when I inherited the journal, they were still using Microsoft Publisher to edit all of these articles, and it was very time consuming, and you can only imagine the layouts and trying to track down and chase the authors to format things and to give you the information. And with my experience that I had already with EdTech Books, I had the crazy idea to reach out to Royce, and I said, what do you think if we have a journal on here? He goes, it was one of those things, well, let me play around with something, and then we did
And then
that.
the next morning.
Right, yeah, the next morning we had a new platform, and what was really exciting about that is the number of hits that journal got skyrocketed because it was open and it's applied instructional design, meaning instructional designers in the field had that opportunity to be able to access that content. So now it wasn't just a matter of them having to find, the ABCT website or hopefully finding the JADE website, which was really hidden and everything else. We were able to do a lot of marketing through EdTech Books. As a faculty member teaching my classes, there are certain classes where I think we already have good books that we can use to teach some of these courses. And then there's those other topics when we want to start getting into some of the complexities that are inherent in instructional design. You would probably need to get your students to buy like 10 or 12 books, and that's not cost effective. And so what I've liked is I've been able to, for some of my classes where I've been able to just assemble, you can pick from different articles, from different books in EdTech Books, so you make your own course path. And so it's great to say, if you're interested in these things, these are 5 readings that I've been able to extract from, whether it was from JADE or whether it was from other publications that were on EdTech Books, or to be able to use an entire textbook off of EdTech Books. There's a lot of flexibility with that. And so I think that's been very helpful from the faculty standpoint in terms of leveraging this platform.
And so, so it's really EdTech Books and Journal now. Don't change the name though.
And encyclopedia.
Yeah, EdTech Books, it's almost becoming like Bed Bath & Beyond, right? Like it's like EdTech Books and Beyond now. Jill, can you talk a little bit about, so the journal is now there in EdTech Books. If people wanted to then publish in that journal, what do they need to do? I mean, do they have to go to some other website? Is there information in EdTech Books to publish in the journal?
No, well, I don't think anything has changed since my departure, but if you go on the website, we had everything there. So you accessed it, and there was the editorial board information, the submission guidelines. But at the time I was editor, there was 3 different types of articles or frameworks we would publish. So all of that was there. So it just made for easy access. We were able to get rid of our old Wix website that we had. We were, we laugh, we say we're a very high-tech journal at the time, using Google for everything. And so being able to have everything running out of EdTech Books was a lot smoother too.
Great.
But it also gives you a lot more exposure for the authors that are writing these pieces and getting that work out to the practitioners.
And so Jill had started to talk about how having now all of these journal articles in EdTech Books was able to impact teaching and learning a little bit. And so now I want to turn to Aras and ask that question. Can you talk a little bit about how EdTech Books can help both instructors and students with their teaching and learning goals?
Yeah.
And this is where you want me
share
to.
my slide?
Yeah,
Just go
absolutely.
to the first slide. Okay, I will make it short. If you are ready, I will ask you a simple question. Already we are asking that question frequently. Why EdTech Books? Probably, you will hear many things, but I will show you some facts and figures. Probably you will be impressed like me. And do you hear openness in the introduction sections of the articles? Probably yes, but do you want to see the best example? I mean, rather than cliche discourses in the introduction section of the articles, if you want to see best examples, EdTech Books is one of the best examples. Can we go to the next slide, please? Indeed, EdTech Books providing more than an open textbook platform, but it provides you a tool to share your content. And I think this is really important because sharing is caring. And if you care your students, your colleagues, I mean, your university or institution, you have to use EdTech Books because you share your intellectual output. That's really important. So next one, please. This was the main reason to use slides. Please just look at the figures on the left side. I know quantitative metrics do not mean a lot of things, but this was really wise. The total access is around 12 million. That's impressive. On the other hand, if you look at the other figures like thus far, if you use EdTech Books, you can provide food for 16K students, health insurance for around 40K students, tuition for 160,000 students, and it's also equal to 700 bachelor's degree and 300 master's degree. Yeah, that's really impressive. In many times, people promote, only click numbers like 12 million, but that's really important. As I told you, if you use EdTech Books, you show that you care people, you care your colleagues. That's why you should use EdTech Books. So probably this would be a really good justification. Can we jump to the next one, please? And I also believe that openness is not only a cliche term, but it's a stance. I mean, it's a stance to capitalist educational system. I've just heard in my school, one of the students suicided a few days ago because of financial reasons. And I hear in the newspaper, there are a lot of students in Europe, they are abandoning their higher education, or likewise, probably it's a real problem in the US. So we are providing a good solution. It's EdTech Books. And as I told you, it is not only a textbook platform. It's a community. It's a podium that you can show that you can care people, you care people. So you have to use EdTech Books. I think this was a good reason.
Yeah, and going back to this idea of seeing how many people have rated a book, to see how many clicks your book is getting, to see what people are actually reading. The analytics in EdTech Books have been really powerful, I know, for my work. When I go to talk to my dean, and my dean says, "Why are you doing all of this work with open books? Why aren't you trying to get more research articles out there and things like that?" And I can say, "Listen, I can put out a research article that's going to get cited 30 times, but I can also put out a book that's going to save hundreds of thousands of students money, that's going to have a really big impact." And I'm going to talk about this in a later slide, but one of the things I love about teaching and learning for EdTech Books is that when I'm going to design a course for the first time, often one of the first places I'm turning for resources is EdTech Books. Because unlike when I have to have students buy a textbook from some publisher, where I'm going to maybe use some of the chapters and ignore some chapters, with EdTech Books, I can really customize the chapters however I want because they're openly licensed. And so I can download a book and say, instead of saying, "Hey, read the first 5 pages of chapter 12 and then skip a few pages and then go over to this book and read these pages," I can just take chapters from these books and create the chapter that I want my students to read. And so it's been that flexibility has really helped me with my course design. And so let's talk about some of those features that EdTech Books has. I mean, being able to download and edit chapters like that. Royce, can you talk about some of the features of, so yes, the EdTech Books exists online, but can students have access to materials for EdTech Books offline? What does that look like?
Yeah, of course. And I can talk about this all day. But part of the problem is that fish in the water doesn't know it's in the water, right? So as I don't know, and I think the rest of us do these kind of things, we forget how different a lot of it is from what people are used to. And so sometimes we'll just say something, "Of course it does that." But it's we forget how uncommon it is, right? So simple things and Cecil alluded to modularity, right? So everything is broken up into chapters. Each chapter automatically generates PDF downloads and Word document downloads. So they can access it in an editable format, they can access it in a printable format. everything is mobile first, so they can access it on their phones. They have direct links to everything. There are QR codes that take them to everything. So if I'm presenting,
And what does mobile first mean?
Thank you. So mobile first.
So I can access it. I can access it on my phone, but
yeah.
what's the first part?
So it means that, so historically in web design, people would develop for desktop and laptop first. So that's why when mobile phones started to come around, you started to see two different versions of websites. You see the normal version of Amazon.com and the mobile.amazon.com. Because what the engineers were finding is that they couldn't take the existing laptop or desktop version and re-engineer it for mobile. They had to have a completely different site. So modern web design goes the opposite direction. It says, let's start with mobile design, and then you have a mobile version of a site, and then that's easy to scale up. So it allows engineers to have a single version of a site rather than two separate sites. And this is really important for our users across the, so like, it's important for my students who are maybe on the bus and want to read their assignment on the way home. But it's super important for people for whom maybe mobile is their only method of access. We find about a third of all of our website traffic is mobile traffic. And we also find that less than half of our users are in the United States. This is increasingly important in other parts of the world. So the second biggest user of EdTech Book, anyone guess what country is the second biggest user of EdTech Books behind the United States? It's not China, not Turkey.
Singapore? No, Philippines.
Philippines.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Philippines, followed by India. And so like, we see that making it everything mobile first, it's not just that we go create content and we add mobile as an afterthought, right, in case we might need it. Making everything mobile first means that we're catering to the needs of everybody at the beginning. It's a universal design learning approach to creating content. So there's that. We also have automated text-to-speech. So we use AI to convert all content to a nice voice that reads it to you. And we can do that in multiple languages. We also have automated translations that we can do on all content. So I hear increasingly, like, people will be like, Rick, you love audiobooks. Do you use the text-to-speech?
I've done it before, not all the time, but yeah.
Yeah. So I hear people like, I'm just getting in my car and I'm driving, so I'm gonna listen to a book that Rick wrote, and it
It's
doesn't.
great for insomnia at nighttime.
Yeah.
Specifically your books?
You used to do audiobooks before this feature, right? And you'd hire students to go and.
Yeah, so in the original Foundations book, I realized accessibility was important. There's a lot of people that really don't learn well from reading. They need to be able to listen to things. My son's one of those. And so, but he's not a graduate student, thank goodness. But anyway, but I knew that was important. So I asked the authors to go and record their own chapters. And that's what it was, actually. So rather than having students, it was hit and miss. Some authors did, some authors didn't. But it took a long time, and most people didn't have the time to do it. And so it was really difficult. So this is a really great feature to have the text-to-speech.
Yeah, so it takes 20 seconds for us to do a conversion on text-to-speech for an entire chapter, and then it's there for anyone who wants to do it.
So if I understand correctly, books in EdTech, it will be read to us.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, Cecil, you can demo this for us?
Yeah, I've got. Is there a specific book that I should pull up? Should I pull up the Foundations book?
I don't know, the book or the encyclopedia, or. So you see all the headphones there. So each of these. So not all the content on EdTech Books has this enabled just because we have to pay for it. But if you have content that you want,
This is going to become problematic because if I unmute my computer.
Yeah. Okay. So but there it is. So yeah, you can put that, or you can go to the chapter itself. You can click on one of the chapter titles.
Yeah.
And then you see there at the top, there are different versions. So there's a download button, there's an audio listen button, and all that kind of stuff.
As my son would say, that's in his pocket.
Yeah, well, good. Well, and it doesn't sound like a robot either. It's good high quality text-to-speech. We use the Amazon Poly service, which is relies on a neural network, and it sounds good. It sounds like a real person. And again, like, we can do translations, and then we could do text-to-speech in many different languages as well. So we have some content that has both English and a Spanish and a Russian version, and we have audio for each of those as well.
My student's favorite feature is just being able to click here and get the citation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I hear most often, is like, oh, I'm so glad that I don't have to figure out how to cite this. I could just click a button and have the citation. But yeah, I have students who also download, so they can have the PDFs, they can have because that's not often the case for textbooks in their class. Is, sometimes they have to pay a subscription fee where they get access to the textbook for 1 semester. And then at the end of the semester, that access is gone. And so they lose access to that knowledge. And so they're always trying to figure out, how can I save this for when I'm no longer in the course? And of course, with EdTech Books, like Aras was saying, like everything just lives there. It really is that kind of, that way of showing that we care.
I just mentioned too, so
yeah.
it showed the embed code as well. So like you can take that embed code and like in your learning management system, you create an assignment, you embed that, and then you have your content there, and then the students are responding to it, or the students are doing their assignment based on that. Or you can just take the URL. Like the way that I primarily use it in Canvas, I take the URL, I put it in a module, so as the student's going through Canvas, it's just the content pops up for them. So they don't have to go to a separate system, it's not a separate login that they have to deal with. Everything is just right there in their learning management system. So the modularity of it allows it to be really user-friendly, both within EdTech Books, but also wherever else you're going to use it or access it.
Yeah, which is great, right? I mean, just from an instructional design perspective, we want to limit those clicks away from the LMS, and so being able to embed it like that. For Jill or Ross, with any publishing, are there any features that you really like about the publishing side of EdTech Books?
I think the accessibility, just having all those different formats to be able to reach different learners and different readers and their needs. I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that, and updating content. You're not having to wait for that next edition of a book to come out, or several years later. If there's an error or you want to expand upon something, you have the ability to go in and edit that information and add to it. So it's kind of like a living document, so to speak. If you look at some of the books too that I know Rick has done in particular, you start off with chapters, and then you'll have your call come out, we're looking for a few more chapters on this topic. So it's already out there, and you're just adding to the stuff that's there. So as opposed to, nope, whatever's up there by October 1st, that's what it is. You have to wait. Like you're able to get, you can continue to modify and adapt, which I think is helpful.
Well, and along those lines, if I may, Jill, I think that is a really cool feature, because once a book is published with a commercial publisher, you can't change things very easily. And we had a situation come up recently where one of our chapters, we didn't realize this, but the author had plagiarized some of the chapter. And so we were able to, within 24 hours, pull the chapter down, and we've got a new author who's going to be writing the chapter for us. It will get replaced here in a couple months. That would not be able to happen with a different kind of book, but we can make those kinds of changes with the ebook.
And to Royce's point earlier about the modular design of the books, you don't have to pull down the whole book, right? It's we need to update this one chapter, we need to change this one chapter. The book is still accessible. You just get to change that one chapter or update that one chapter. Karen?
Well, from a student point of view, not having to wait for the next edition and then buy the next edition with only a few other changes in it is really helpful.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the questions that we've had before about EdTech Books is how do we handle new editions of things? Do we have an answer for that, or do we?
Yeah, so I mean, Rick, you want to talk about new editions? So basically there are two approaches. Either you keep working on the one that you've already built and you just keep improving it, or you can just spin out a new book and you can pull whatever chapters aren't changing into that and then add any new chapters. So like, Rick, you kind of do both of those.
And it kind of depends on what you're trying to do. I know in Technica, I think the idea is that this will not have second versions. This chapter will just get better as things go on, and the author will just update it. One of the things that I was conscious of is I wanted people to get credit for these chapters, but realized that there may be need, like things would get stagnant if I didn't force them to revise things. So I wanted to be able to require after 5 or 6 years to say, you need to revise your chapter. And some authors weren't in a position where they could. I had some that had retired or had left academia, and they said, I just can't do this chapter right now. And then we were able to bring in new authors to do new chapters or maybe do revisions on the old chapter. But having a second edition allowed the original chapter to still be there so that they can still get cited for the work they did in the first edition. And it's not like they're erased as we move to a second edition. So that was my decision there. So I think it depends on if you want it to be like EdTechnica and be this like living resource, or if you realize there's going to be versions and you want people to get credit for each version that we do. And that was the reason.
So like in Rick's case, then that just means there's a field for his book where he just puts edition number 2, and then just updates the citation And so those automated citations that people are using and that Google indexes, those are all updated with addition to.
Yeah, great.
When it comes to futures, my students always complain about the have a list of readings. So perhaps I was just thinking now there are new AI tools, and they provide really functional APIs, and with one click, perhaps the whole book can be outlined in a micro version with key takeaways and spotlights. And of course, we cannot leave this only to an algorithmic decision, but on the confirmation of the author, this can be provided as a second option to the readers. That would be helpful and time saving.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing AI used that way in a lot of places right now. I don't know if any of you have purchased a product off of Amazon recently, but they are using AI to kind of figure out, well, what have all of the reviews said so that we can boil that down to something that's going to make you buy this product. But yeah, I mean, that would be a great idea for the books. So Royce, tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
It's too late.
Well, maybe January. But,
Good. I'm glad that you're giving yourself
I think
time.
beginning of next year, I'm hoping to have some things like that. Yeah.
And in the statistics sections now, time saving and it's really important. Time is precious.
And I also mentioned, so that goes in both directions. So we can tap into like AI, APIs, things like that. But people can also use it. We have an open API on EdTech Books. So if someone wants to build their own tool that just goes through and summarizes all the content on EdTech Books, they can just connect into our API and they can do it on their own site.
Well, and something a feature that I really love is the translation feature. When we first published our book on EdTech Books and started working on it in 2018 and published it in 2019, we immediately had some people reach out to us and ask like, hey, your book doesn't have a non-commercial license on it. Could we take your book, translate it into this language, and then like, can we translate it into Mandarin and sell it in China? And we were like, I mean, there's a reason we're not selling our book, but yeah, go ahead, like you're free to try. But now like there's not even a reason for that because we can just translate books in EdTech Books. Is that right?
Yeah, so we use Amazon's Translate service, which again uses their own network, and we've tested it in a couple languages, like targeting the ones that are historically the most difficult. So like, but like an Arabic reader told me it's about 90% accurate. It's good as far as automated translations go. But yeah, it takes maybe like a minute for each book, or for each chapter, for us to translate it into pretty much any language, any common language.
It's funny that you say that, like that's a long time to wait. Like
yeah. Well, we have to wait. It goes through line by line and
right.
translates it. But then once it does that, then we save it, and then similar to Aras's idea of like making sure that the author still has the ability to go and edit it. So those translations aren't perfect. So we do the automated translation first, it's saved, and then the author can assign editors who maybe speak that language to go in and clean it up.
I want to ask questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Rio.
I'm curious to know what the big publishers think of that tech.
I don't know. I haven't gotten any letters or threatening emails or
Headless chicken showing up on your doorstep. Or...
Yeah, or attempts to buy us out. So I don't know.
They didn't like buying them, but the world is changing. I mean, this is kind of redistributing the power. I mean, we are taking the power from the publishers and redistribute to all people. We actually own these places, not they. And this is kind of something I was talking yesterday. We are just taking our power back. That's it. That can happen. That's why EdTech Books stands. I mean, it's not just a platform.
And I think too, I don't think this is a surprise to publishers. I think that they've known for a long time that a model based on content access is not going to continue to be sustainable in the way the world is changing. And so that's why so many of them have pivoted to services. So it's like Pearson now, well, sometimes they get the content is free, but then all the wraparound services like the testing associated with the content, what they charge for. So I think that they realize that content is no longer viable. So again, they might see this as inevitable, and so that
I teach online. I'm going back to my classes tonight. I teach tonight. And guess what I'm gonna be telling them about? EdTech,
Well, good.
essentially.
Okay, I'll make sure the server fires are running. So
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and it seems that the movement, I mean, artificial intelligence is taking away intellectual property. I mean, it seems like it's absorbing, all of this intellectual property. And so really it's just, the EdTech Books is a more professional way of providing expertise.
Well, I think that one of the things that's exciting, I do a lot with my students about, hey, your teacher burnout's a real thing. All of you have the capacity to be excellent educators. I don't want you to leave the field in 5 years. So how can you use AI to provide all of yourselves with a free teaching assistant? There's an AI tool out there called Quizzes that will scan text, pull out the important words or phrases or ideas that it sees as essential, and then create assessment questions based on those things. And so when we're talking about things like additional services, even those additional services are now becoming something that AI is able to do. And so it'd be really easy to take these chapters off of EdTech Books, run them through AI like Quizzes, and then just have assessment questions ready for students that you can then integrate into your LMS or download in whatever way. So yeah, it's really exciting in that way. One of the things that I've had my students do with some of the readings that we take from EdTech Books is kind of what Aras suggested earlier, where they go in and they copy the text into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you, take this chapter and boil it down to a bullet point, a list of essential ideas. And for my students who are struggling readers, that's great for them, because now instead of reading, a 15-minute chapter, they just get 12 bullet points of ideas. And then sometimes they'll use that. If there's a bullet point that's not clear, they'll go back to the chapter and look for those additional details. So there's lots of exciting ideas with what you can do when something is openly licensed. They can't do that with the print textbook, right? I mean, I guess they could if they wanted to type it all in, and ChatGPT can see now, so you could take pictures of it, I guess, and ask it to analyze it. But yeah, EdTech Books, I think, makes all of that a little bit easier. If there are people here who are interested in getting started with publishing in EdTech Books, I mean, I mentioned that I've put a lot of books up there, but I'd be interested from your perspectives, what are the best ways to kind of get into putting something on EdTech Books?
I don't really know I just kind of emailed Royce before and said, I have a random idea, can I do this and stuff, and I don't know if you have a process in place.
So the idea is open, so we anyone can go and log in with a Google account or an OrCid account and start creating stuff. We limit you to 10 books at the outset, but you can create up to 10 books.
Up close, I think.
But if you reach that limit, just email me and I think I bumped Rick up from 10 to 1,000 the other day because he reached his limit. But yeah, so you just go log in and start making stuff. Now, there still has to be some level of gatekeeping, and so we have to try to find a balance between making it completely open and providing gatekeeping so that we ensure that the content is high quality and that we provide because there is a perception of OER that is lower quality and things like that. And so some ways we have to filter and gatekeep for those purposes. And so the balance that I've taken with the overall platform is we let anyone create content. When you create content, you can share it with anyone that you want. You can use it in your class. You can just send someone the link to it, but it won't be indexed by Google and it won't show up on our featured list of content. It won't show up in our search results until you go through a publication process, and it'll step you through, okay, do you have an abstract? Is your citation correct? Do you have a cover image? And all these kinds of things. And once you do that, then it goes to me for final approval, and most of the time I just say, okay, this is great. The main times when I don't approve things is if it's spam, or I get a lot of companies that are trying to benefit from our search engine ratings, and so they'll post a book that just has a bunch of links to their website, and that's it.
I will say that in the state of Kansas format, our Kansas Board of Regents, which is over all of our public institutions, have had a huge push toward OER over the last several years. and they've been providing grants to have people either replace their current course materials with OER, to curate a list of OER to replace materials, like replace a textbook with an OER textbook, curate materials to replace a textbook, or to create your own OER textbook that you're going to use to replace your textbook from the publisher. And a lot of my colleagues really like to go after that last one, because instead of getting like a $500 grant, you can get a $5,000 grant. And so it's like, well, I got to publish something anyway. I'm already dissatisfied with the way that I use the current textbook. I've already created all of this content that I'm putting into modules. Why not go for that $3,000 to $5,000 grant? And my first year at my institution last year, I think I helped 2 of my colleagues create books on EdTech Books, where they're like, yeah, I don't really know what platform I'm going to use. I might use WordPress. I might use some of these other things. And I was like, you should just check out EdTech Books. And they all found it really easy to go in, to create a book, to add chapters, to go into chapters and add rich media, whether it's images or links to videos that they want their students to see as part of the chapters. And so they've been able to create those books. So we've been able to create a textbook for a course that didn't have a textbook previously, replace a textbook in a graduate course that previously had an $80 textbook. And I just wrote a grant proposal to the state to write an assessment book that I actually started on at AACT last year with a faculty member at BYU to create an assessment book that would replace the $90 textbook in my assessment class. And then once those books are ready and they've gone through that process, it's not just our students who will benefit from them, but it's, students around the world.
Well, I think there is kind of some sneakiness too in how we have designed it. So it also, the goal is not just to encourage and support people to create content, but it's guiding them in creating good content, right? Because if you look at like historically OER that are out there, they're typically very ugly. They're all just in PDFs, like one block PDF that you download.
It's created as a Word document,
yeah,
and then
you do save as PDF and I throw it on my website, which is nothing wrong with that. But like, I mean, that's great that you were willing to share in that way. But the problem is it's not very reusable for other people. It doesn't help us with this perception of OER as being low quality and all these kinds of things. So like, I think part of the challenge with like a system like this is also, making it as open as possible, but also through that process, guiding people through creating things that are actually high quality and that are perceived as high quality. So that's why we have some of these balancing acts in the system of trying to do both.
Well, and 5 years ago, when we first published our first K-12 blended teaching book on the platform, one of the things that we wanted peer review, we wanted evaluations, we wanted feedback. And so at that time, what we actually ended up doing was converting the EdTech book into a PDF that we could then have published and printed through Amazon. And we had to, sell it we just sold it at cost of printing. So we could send those out to reviewers. But now there's this nice review system in EdTech Books where we don't even have to worry about printing it out. We can take chapters and we can send them through a blind review process just within EdTech Books. And so I know you're doing a lot of that with EdTechnica. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Made it so people can anonymously submit chapters. If you have a book, you can turn it on so that you can allow people to anonymously submit content. And then once you get the content, you can assign reviewers to it. It has email system built in, so you can send requests to reviewers to review. And you can say, oh, this needs major revisions, minor revisions, and then you can go through an entire revision process within it.
And I've done it from both sides. I've been the person saying, hey, will you review these chapters that we've written for this book? We want to make sure they're quality. And I've been that person who has submitted chapters to, we keep saying EdTechnica, that is the encyclopedia of EdTech for those of you who don't know what EdTechnica is. But I've submitted a couple of chapters to EdTechnica where they've gone out for review and I've been able to get feedback on them and respond to reviewer feedback. And in a lot of ways, I think it's better than some of the ways in which I've received feedback from journals that I've submitted to, because I think there's this idea of this is OER, we want it to be really supportive. And so whereas like when I submit to a journal, sometimes it feels like gatekeeping, where we're trying to make sure that this is only published if it's quality. With EdTech Books, there's that sharing is caring idea of like, no, we want you to be able to publish this and we want to help you get it to that point. That it is publishable. So let's talk about, once you have published something on EdTech Books, how does that impact promotion and tenure? Jill, you have ideas for that?
Well, I have a lot of opinions on it. I mentioned this in one of our panels yesterday. As academics, we are evaluated for impact, or we're told that, as we're doing our research, like, how impactful is your work? And I think OER is an amazing platform to be able to do that. If you're providing, if you look at those stats that were up there earlier, to be able to have that reach and to be able to reach learners that, in different countries and different languages, that's pretty impactful, I think. And the challenge, I think, is a lot of higher ed institutions are still behind on that, where they would still look and go, they typically, at a lot of institutions, they kind of, no one ever tells you exactly what you need for tenure. It's usually like all the whispering that goes on, where they'll say, if you want tenure at this institution, you need to get a journal published, or an article published in this particular journal. Or they'll tell you they have those ones that they're going to be looking at. But one of the things that I think is, I think part of the way we can contribute to that movement is when you're doing your annual evaluations. Cecil mentioned this earlier, where you're writing up your dossiers for tenure and promotion, to be able to say, I've intentionally published this in an OER platform because X, Y, Z, and be able to start advocating for why you've done that. And I think if we have more intentionality with how we're writing about the work that we're doing, and we're writing about how impactful our work is, I think that that's really helpful too. And then it just goes back to those features. One of the things that was that's great about any chapter that's on EdTech Books is that you can see how many downloads, how many views, and so we don't get to see all of that with who's reading our journal articles when they're published. We know when someone cites us, but we don't know.
And that doesn't mean they've read it either.
Right, right. They added our name at the end, and so, but you don't really know what that impact is. And so I think it's writing and providing some of these figures. I know some individuals, when they go for tenure, they're citing the journal. I published something in this journal, this was the impact factor, and it's been cited this many times. I think we need to start talking about, how many hits are those bodies of work getting on an OER platform. And I think that the more we start doing that, I think it's going to be a slow movement, but I think we're starting to see, my institution too does the OER grant. So we're starting to see some changes, and I think it's starting to go in that direction. I think us being able to advocate and write that narrative in an intentional way, I think will help contribute to that too.
Yeah.
And like, we still do citations, right?
Yeah.
You can still see citations, but like, citations have only ever been an imperfect proxy for impact. And so I think I really like what Jill's posing here, like, we need to rethink what we mean by impact, because citations is just a way of trying to get at impact, but now we can get at impact in a much granular level, a much more authentic level as well.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to add as well. I mean, when we published that first K-12 blended teaching book, it was really meant to be a book for practitioners. We weren't putting it out there for researchers. And when we asked researchers to evaluate it, they said, yeah, this sounds great. But it was really the practitioners' opinions that we were concerned with. And one of the surprises to us has been how often that book gets cited in research. And it's because it's open, it's available. When people go into, if they're just going to Google and doing a search for that topic, they're finding EdTech Books. They're going, and we can see through the analytics, how are they getting to the book? Are they getting to the book through, I mean, because we designed an entire course around it, a lot of the clicks come from a course that's taught at Brigham Young University, but then we can also see other universities that are pointing to that book. We can see how many people are coming from Google for that book. I was having to analyze syllabi at community colleges in Kansas last year to look at whether or not we would accept transfer credits from these community colleges into our university. And one of the courses that I had to look at was an education for technology course, or technology for education course. And they had 3 books listed on their syllabus that were required reading, and all 3 of them were from EdTech Books. And so it was like, yeah, this class is great. Yeah, absolutely that class could transfer it, especially since one of them was the K-12 blended teaching book. Like, that was great to see. That was the first time that I had ever seen, like, it was someone I had never talked to. It was a community college I had never heard of before, but they were using this platform. And I think that is wonderful.
Rick had his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Rick.
I'm just wondering, looking forward, Royce, what can we do for, well, ongoing, but also for improving impact? Is EdTech Books, are they like part of the open educational network or other kinds of big repositories? And also, what's the potential for getting like indexed in databases? I don't know how tricky that is.
Yeah, so there's nothing preventing any of that. So like the first step for all of that is properly structuring your metadata, and that's all done. So that's why we're indexed by Google Scholar. Well, we did have some hiccups with our Google Scholar indexing. I think it's all resolved now. But we are indexed by Google Scholar. We're high up on Google search results. The structure is there to be effectively indexed elsewhere. We have DOI registration and all that kind of stuff. But that's on my list of things to do, is take the next step of how, I think we just actually have to go to Scopus, go to these, to Eric, and just figure out how to submit.
Is that a by book thing or by database? Do you do all of EdTech Books, or do I need to?
I would assume,
do I need to be taking responsibility?
No, I would assume, I'll let you know in about 6 months. I would assume we can do it at the system level, similar to like DOIs. Like DOIs we do at the system level. So, but yeah, I think we can do that. It'll just take some enabling when I'm not teaching classes.
Yeah, I know. Well, sabbatical coming up. What about OEM kinds of thing? Had somebody asked me about that.
I think it's the exact same situation. Like they could throw us in there if they wanted to, but we haven't actually taken the step of because I think the goal has been up to this point making sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to do like internally to be good participants and citizens and all of this. And now the next step is actually connecting with these existing networks.
Any other features that are coming up that people can look forward to? Things we should know about?
Connecting into AI is going to be a big thing. So I think these ideas of summaries will be really cool. Again, I don't know exactly all that we'll do at this point, but I think that they're all.
And Royce, remind us, how big is your development team?
It's really just me, and Melanie's been helping me as well. So Melanie's been helping me with LTI integration, which has been really cool. So we've made progress on that. But like the idea with LTI integration is, so we can track what people are doing in books, right? But we do it all anonymously. So if like a person from the Philippines goes to a book, we can see whether or not they read the chapter, we can see how they respond to learning checks within the book. We don't know who they are, and we intentionally don't know who they are. We don't want to know who they are. But our teachers want to know if their students are actually reading, right? So we've been building an LTI integration so that when you integrate it into Canvas, you can actually track to see, you can maybe assign it to make an assignment where a student needs to read this, and then Canvas tracks whether or not they actually went and read it, how much time they spent on it, or those kinds of things. So the LTI integration allows us to send data back and forth within a learning management system. So that's a feature that will be coming out soon. Like multiple things with AI, so summarization, creating a learning. We already have the ability to create learning checks within content, but very few people actually do. But I think we have an AI feature that actually summarizes, creates distractors, and creates prompts to help learners to identify what the key concepts are. Then I think that would be really helpful. And it'd be really helpful for the author too, to see where common misconceptions are with their content for continuous improvement. So that, I think we have a keyword system right now, but it's, so authors can go in and assign keywords to chapters and books, and that helps with search engine optimization, also helps with just navigating through the site. But a lot of people don't, or they don't use very good keywords. So like right now they get prompts. If you go and add a keyword, it'll try to predict what kinds of keywords you should include based on your abstract, and so it'll give you prompts. But that's not very robust. Like that's just a simple keyword search. But using AI for something like that would be helpful too. So those are some of the things off the top of my head that I know that we want to do. Oh, EPUBs is something else we want to do. They're kind of just a pain, so that's why we haven't done it. And there's not a huge benefit over PDFs, but some people want them. So that's something else on the horizon.
Great. That is our time. I didn't see any questions from the online group. So